Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm Cole Phillips, author of The Adventure of the Twisted Truths and host of The Book and Dagger. Today we're going to be talking about one of the greatest fictional battles of all time. Now, if you know me, you've seen some of my videos, you might have a guess at what this great battle is going to come from. Now, if you said Lord of the Rings, you're actually going to be wrong. Now, I love Lord of the Rings, and Lord of the Rings has, in my opinion, the best fictional battles of all of history. Like when I think Lord of the Rings battles, I think the Battle of Helm's Deep, the Battle of the Pelennor Fields, the battle outside the Black Gate of Mordor. Lord of the Rings really just set a lot of the standard of like fantasy battles. And this is actually very apparent in many series, including The Wheel of Time. Robert Jordan actually, in the first book, makes a lot of subtle and not so subtle references to Tolkien and his work in his first book, The Eye of the World. And what I've read, there are very few writers who can hold a candle to Tolkien when they write battles, and they don't just write the battles; they write the setup, the storyline, what gets the main characters to the battle. Robert Jordan actually, however, does this very well, and it would not be a stretch to call him the American Tolkien, in my opinion. Well, for starters, first of all, The Wheel of Time is a 14-book series that has dozens, if not hundreds, of named characters that you have to remember their names and how they fit into the plot, and just dozens of storylines just weaving in and out until they finally connect here, and they split off here, and they go there, and then the other threads come in and they connect. Just the storytelling, the story weaving is just fascinating and amazing for The Wheel of Time. And Robert Jordan was very good at writing battles. So the battle we're going to be talking about today is the Battle of Dumai's Wells. So massive spoilers to the book series, which you probably guessed. Massive spoilers. If you have not read the book series, you will be learning a lot of stuff, some of them shocking twists and turns that we will be talking about here today. If you did not leave already at the part when I said The Wheel of Time is a massive 14-book series, a lot of you were probably just like, oh, no, that's not for me, and left, which is okay, because if you are not interested in a 14-book series, I totally get that, because Robert Jordan's books are like, when I listen to the audiobooks, I found them for free on YouTube, and I was like, I'm not dropping hundreds of dollars on a book series, no matter how good it is. So I found them all for free on YouTube, by the way. It took me like 6 months, because they're like 30, 40 hours for one book, but it was worth it. It's a great way to pass the time, like you're doing chores or just like cooking or just driving. And I thoroughly enjoyed myself and had a blast listening to them. And the Battle of Dumai's Wells is one of my favorite moments in the entire book series. It is just an amazing battle, but also just the way the book set up the battle and the structures, the storylines that led to it were really well done. And today we're going to be doing a little dissecting of the battle and what makes it so good. Now, a big part of the Wheel of Time, to understand the Battle of Dumai's Wells, is a big part of the Wheel of Time is there is a lot of world building. There are many countries with their different cultures. They have different, like I said, they have different cultures, and they have different armies. They have different like fighting styles. There's just so many different. I don't want to overuse the word cultures, but really all there is. There's so many different cultures in the Wheel of Time. And they're all unique. They all have their own aspect that sets them apart. And it's just really solid, good world building on Robert Jordan's part. And so in the first book of The Wheel of Time, there's not really many big battles. You get the main characters are together, and they fight occasional skirmishes against a Trolloc over here, which, by the way, Trollocs are like these fusion of men and beasts. They're like humanoid shapes, but they've got like some have like goats' heads with like horns. Others will have like a bear's head, and they're just like these really disgusting creatures that are basically, instead of like goblins that I feel are very overused in a lot. Like, don't get me wrong, I love it when goblins are just the foot soldiers of the enemy, but Trollocs are like, it's a new fresh take on just disposable foot soldiers. But in the first book of the Wheel of Time, there's not any really big battles. There's like just mostly skirmishes here and there, and there's kind of one big battle at the end, but it's not really focused on a lot. And the same kind of goes for the second book. There's not really any big battles. There is the one, there's a bunch of skirmishes, and there's the one kind of big battle at the end when the Shan come and the White Cloaks and the Shan fight. And then eventually the Shan are eventually driven away when, big spoiler here, Matt blows the horn of Valir and summons all the heroes of the horn, and they ride with Rand al'Thor and push the Shan away. And then the same also goes for the third book. There's not really any battles, like big battles. It's just kind of skirmishes, and then there's the final big fight at the end where Rand and the Aiel. More spoilers, by the way. Very last spoilers for all the books here leading up to the book in which the Battle of Dumai as well takes place. Rand and the Aiel take the Stone of Tyr, which fulfills this big prophecy. And then but even now, it's just been mostly like a one culture group, like the Shan versus the White Cloaks, and then the Aiel versus the people of Tyr. It's a lot of, when you do see fights, it's a lot of people from one nation versus people of another nation. One people group versus another people group. Now, the fourth book does kind of push this away, because the fourth book, you start to see more interactions. Like Rand goes to the Aiel, he fulfills several prophecies and gets 11 of the 12 Aiel clans on his side, except for the Shido, who are the 12th clan. And then the Shido go and they conquer the nation of Cairhien. And so Rand now takes the Aiel who follow him, and they go into free Cairhien. And so you actually get to see more like cultures clashing. You get to see the Aiel fighting Aiel and the Cairhenians fighting Aiel. And then in the fifth book, it's Dumai's Wells is kind of significant. Dumai's Wells, if you've been following the pattern, you kind of get where I'm going. All the books have kind of like minor skirmishes, and then there's like a big battle towards the end of the book. And that sets up the next book. And the fifth book of the Wheel of Time it follows the same similar format. There are like fight scenes and skirmishes. At the end, there's the big battle. But that battle is the Battle of Dumai's Wells. And the Battle of Dumai's Wells is really unique, because by this time in the book, Rand has been acknowledged as the Dragon Reborn. He has control of Tyr. He has control of Cairhien. 11 of the 12 Aiel clans follow him. And he's becoming like in the beginning, a lot of people were like, oh, Rand al'Thor is just a false dragon. He'll soon fall. But no, Rand is gaining momentum. He's got nations supporting him. He's got the Aiel, the fiercest warriors in the land, supporting him. And so a lot of the nations of the world are sitting there like, okay, he's like, we need to acknowledge him as he's actually, whether he's the Dragon Reborn or not, he's a threat. And the White Tower is also, which is where the Aes Sedai live, the White Tower is also like, okay, he's the Dragon Reborn. Like, but it is interesting. But by this time in the books, the White Tower has been split, and Elaida is the Amarlin seat, or the head of all the Aes Sedai. Which, if you would like to learn more about the Aes Sedai, you can check out my previous video that I did not too long ago. But anyway, so Elaida, the White Tower has split because Rand al'Thor is gaining power. He was being kind of supported from the shadows by Swan Sanche, the previous Amarlin seat, who was like working with Moraine to try to keep Rand al'Thor on a leash, but kind of let him do what he wanted to fulfill the prophecies. And then, but she was overthrown by Elaida and her faction of the White Tower. So by this book, Rand has control of like Cairhien, Tia, and the Aiel, but Elaida has control of the White Tower, and Elaida is perhaps the biggest threat to Rand, because Elaida is essentially the most powerful woman in the world, just in terms of like, she controls hundreds of Aes Sedai, which are basically witches who manipulate the entire world. And she has control of the White Tower, so whatever she says is kind of like the faction of the Aes Sedai who are split off and like are rebelling against Elaida. They don't have really any weight behind their words anymore when they talk to people. Now the whole authority of the White Tower is behind Elaida, and Elaida's philosophy on Rand is, yes, he's the Dragon Reborn. Yes, he needs to fight the last battle, but the Aes Sedai need to put him on a leash, and we need to just control him and keep him from running around, and we then basically treat him like a dog that you're going to use to hunt with. Now, because Rand is so powerful, however, the rebel Aes Sedai are like, maybe he can help us. And some of the rebel Aes Sedai are like, okay, we think he's the Dragon Reborn, so we should help him, but we also want him to help us get the White Tower back. So you have both sides of the White Tower faction kind of trying to curry favor with Rand. So they both send emissaries to him. And this is, you've got the one group, the rebels, who are, they go to Rand and they're like, hey, we want you to help us. And then Rand is just, by this time, Rand is like, he knows a lot of the Aes Sedai. They have ulterior hidden motives, because like a big thing in the Wheel of Time is that there's a saying that is the truth an Aes Sedai tells you is often not what she means. Or I butchered that. I'll put it on the screen, but basically it's just saying don't trust Aes Sedai, because they'll tell you one thing and they won't lie, but it's not exactly the truth that they told you. It's not the whole truth. So Rand kind of just is like, no, just he's like, I won't help you. Basically, he doesn't say that outright, but he's like, I'll think about helping you. And because it didn't help the rebel Aes Sedai's case that they went in there and they tried to be all intimidating, like, oh, we're Aes Sedai, and Rand was just like, nah, I'm the Dragon Reborn. I've got Kyrian, I got Tyr, I got the Aiel behind 11 of the 12 Aiel clans behind me. So Rand just kind of like shoos them away and is like, nah, I don't need your help, and I'm not going to help you. And meanwhile, Elida's Aes Sedai come to Rand, and they give him all these like gifts, this gold. They send this. Elida sends this flattering letter to Rand, and she's like, "Hey, you're the Dragon Reborn. Come visit the White Tower. Let us support you in any way we can." And Rand is, of course, still suspicious of her as well. So he accepts all the gifts, and he tells the Aes Sedai sent by Elida that he'll think about it, which makes them mad because Aes Sedai are not used to being telling someone to do something, and then that person's like, "I'll think about it." Anyway, so basically what happens is around this time, as the emissaries are coming, Perrin Aybara, who we have not has not seen Rand for a couple books because he was off saving the two rivers from Trollocs. He comes to Cairhien to visit Rand, and he brings along his wife Fael with him. So they come with a couple hundred Two Rivers warriors, and they come and they visit Rand. And also about this time, the first of Mayenne, who shows up in like this second book, or no, the third book, I think. No, I think it's actually the fourth book. Yeah, no, she shows up for the first time in the third book, but we don't really learn about her till the fourth book. The first of Mayenne is Barrelane, and she's essentially the ruler of this like tiny little nation that Rand has, that was under threat by Tyr, and then Rand took over Tyr, and basically she basically allied herself with Rand so that her little nation would be safe from Tyr. And basically she's also there with a lot of her soldiers from Mayenne visiting. Or no, actually that's right. Rand had made her so Rand has made Barrelane and then Ruark an Aiel clan chieftain, kind of the like temporary rulers of Cairhien, because the Shido Aiel took over Cairhien, overthrew like the king and the government. And so Rand came in when he liberated Cairhien. He was like, well, I need somebody to govern Cairhien for me. So he made Barrelane and Ruark, because Ruark is this old Aiel clan chieftain that Rand trusts, and he's very wise and like battle experience. And then Barrelane is someone who has supported Rand from the beginning. Like, yeah, she's trying to use him for her own ends, but if Rand falls, Barrelane's going down too. So Barrelane is essentially an ally of Rand who's going to support him no matter what. And so Barrelane and Ruark are there. So you've got a bunch of Aiel, a bunch of Two Rivers men. You've got Mayenners there. You've got the Cairhiens who support Rand, and you've got the two factions of the Aes Sedai. So kind of not really for the first time, but one of the first times you've got all these different people groups and factions just coming and in the same spot, which is a big boiling kettle. Anyway, what happens is the Aes Sedai working for Elida, which there's a couple Dark Friend Aes Sedai mixed in with them too, so that's even more people added to the mix who are just, they've all got their own different goals and agendas. And the fifth book does a really good job because you get to see inside the heads of all the different people groups. You can see Perrin, Barrelane, Gaul, Rand, just the Aes Sedai. So you all know what they want, but you don't know how they're going to achieve it. Well, everything goes bad when the Aes Sedai, who are with Elida's faction of the tower, they get in contact with Savannah, a woman named Savannah, who's the leader of the Shido, basically the default clan chief, because she was married to the previous chief. And so they get in touch with the Shido, and they're like, "Look, we are going to kidnap Randolph Thor, and we're going to take him to the White Tower." And they're like, "Will you help us?" Because nobody would suspect Aiel, and so, well, nobody would suspect if like Aiel, like nobody would mess with Aiel. Is what I guess what I meant, because like the Aiel are insanely fierce warriors, so nobody in their right mind would mess with them. And so Savannah's like, "Yeah, I can provide an escort as you're taking him from Kyrian back to the White Tower, because the Aes Sedai who came to visit Rand from the White Tower on the Lyta's request, there's only like, I think like 40 of them, and they've got a couple hundred guards with them. But they know if they kidnap Rand, they're gonna have all these nations and armies after them. So they turn the Shido and they're like, okay, we're gonna make an alliance. We want you to help us get Rand to the White Tower. Little do the Aes Sedai helping or working for Lyta know, though, they don't realize that Savannah has her own goals, because Savannah wants to marry Rand, who is the Aiel's Kara Khan, or Chief of Chiefs. And Savannah wants to basically marry Rand and make herself the like leader of all the Aiel people, and then just take over the whole world for the Aiel. But so Savannah and the Aes Sedai, they team up eventually. So the Aes Sedai, working for Lyta, they go in the White Tower, and they go into Kyrian, and they manage to kidnap Rand. They sneak some of their, they go into his throne room, and they tie him up with the one power and put him in a box and then carry him out. And then they depart the city. And they put up this story. They're like, "Oh, he just vanished suddenly," because like Rand knows traveling, which is like you open a portal in the air with the one power and you step through and you're gone. So they would tell the guard outside, they're like, "Oh, he did that and vanished. We're leaving the city because we're disgusted. He's not helping us." So of course, all the people working for Rand, they're all happy to see the Aes Sedai go, so they don't question it. And so the Aes Sedai working for Lyta, they have Rand in the chest, and they also caught Min, Rand's girlfriend, and they take her and Rand out, and they start on their journey to the White Tower. Well, so it's a couple days in Kyrian before anyone realizes Rand is gone, because it's not unusual for Rand to just teleport across from Kyrian to the Aiel Waste and then back down to Tyr. It's not unusual for Rand to be gone. Then Berelain finds Rand's sword belt and sword in his room. And don't ask what she was doing in his room, or why she went into his room in the first place. But anyway, she finds, she just for some reason goes into his room and finds the sword belt and sword. And she brings it to a couple people, Perrin and Gaul and Lord Dobrain, who is a high-ranking Kyrian noble who supports Rand when not a lot of other people do. And she's like, "I found this in Rand's room." And they're like, "He would never leave that behind." And then around this time, they're also like, "By the way, has anyone seen Min anywhere?" And so then it kind of clicks with them. They're like, "Oh, the Aes Sedai left at the same time that Rand disappeared. That's not good." So Perrin is like, "Well, okay, this is not good." He's like, "They've kidnapped Rand. They're taking him to the White Tower." So he's like, "We got to do something." So Perrin, being the friend of Randolph Thor and the Lord of the Two Rivers, he assembles this army on the spot. Like, it's a small group as fast as he can. He gets Ruark and a couple thousand Aiel. He gets Amis, who is Ruark's wife, and a wise woman, which the Aiel wise women are basically women who can channel. They're not Aes Sedai because they don't go to the White Tower. They stay in the Aiel Wastes, and they're just called the wise women. And some of them use the one power, some of them can't. But he gathers the Aiel wise women who can channel and who support Rand. He gets Berelain's winged guards. It's a couple hundred of them, I believe. So he gets a couple thousand Aiel warriors, including the Spears of the Dragon. I think they're called the Algaida Sisquai, which means Spears of the Dragon in Aiel. They're like a group of Aiel warriors that have devoted themselves to Rand. And then there's the Maidens of the Spear, which I can't remember their Aiel name, but it's really cool. And they're basically another Aiel warrior society who is devoted to Rand. So he gets the Maidens of the Spear, the Spears of the Dragon, the Aiel Wise Women. Perrin has his couple hundred Two Rivers bowmen, which Two Rivers bowmen are super deadly. And he gets Berelain's Wind Guards, and Lord Dobrain brings about 500 of his Kyrian Lancers. And they all book it out of Kyrian to try and go rescue Rand. And along the way, they run into the Aes Sedai who are supporting the rebels, and the Aes Sedai supporting the rebels, there's like 9 of them. The group that was sent to Rand, there's like 9 of them, and so they basically are like, okay, well, we'll help rescue him, because they're like, okay, well, now he'll finally give us support if we rescue him. So these the 9 Aes Sedai and their warders, they team up with Perrin and his ragtag army. Perrin also has in his group, he has Loyal, one of the best characters in the Wheel of Time, who's an Ogier, which is basically, think, a mix of Treebeard and an Ogier, if that makes any sense. An ogre. They're called Ogier in the Wheel of Time, and they're basically these like giant creatures that sing songs to trees and are just peaceful, loving creatures. But Loyal is a adventurous Ogier, and so he runs around looking for adventures and stuff. That's what led him to become a friend of Rand. He also has Aram, who is a tinker, which is basically what the Wheel of Time calls gypsies. They're tinkers, people who go around these wagons, but they people who follow what's called the way of the leaf, where they don't do any harm. Basically, Aram is this tinker who forsook the way of the leaf after he saw Trollocs killing his fellow tinkers, and so he took up the art of the sword. Now he's attached himself to Perrin, like a bodyguard. And so all these people are going to rescue Rand. Meanwhile, Savannah has double crossed the Aes Sedai rescuing Rand and kidnapping Rand, and Savannah has brought 40,000 Shido warriors down upon these 40 Aes Sedai and their couple hundred guards. And the Aes Sedai, basically, they put up this ring of wagons, and they like have their guard, and they put up this big like dome of like air to protect themselves from the 40,000 Shido warriors and the couple hundred Shido wise women who are channelers. And so Perrin arrives with his army about the same time they're attacking, and he sees before him just this massive sea of Shido just everywhere. Like they outnumber him, like I think the odds it's like 40-5, so whatever the math ticks down to. Basically, he's crazy outnumbered, and there are hundreds of Shido channelers, which far outmatches his about 100 or so wise ones and 9 Aes Sedai. And channelers like can really turn the tide of the battle. So now the Aes Sedai are restricted because the Aes Sedai's 3 oaths tell them they cannot use the one power as a weapon except in defense of their life or a fellow Aes Sedai's life or their warder or against a dark friend. And so the Aes Sedai and the Dome aren't really doing anything other than protecting themselves with the Dome of Air. Now, the Aiel wise women, they don't have limits. However, the Aiel wise women are not trained in battle, so they can do like a few like fireballs and lightning blasts here and there. Other than that, the Aiel wise women, they don't really do a lot with the one power, so they're not very big like weapons. But still, even like a few fireballs and lightning blasts here and there is pretty significant when you're just a normal dude on a horse with a sword. So basically, but Perrin, however, has a secret backup plan too, because Perrin is a wolf brother, which is a massive spoiler. Perrin is a wolf brother, so basically he has like yellow eyes, and he has like super good hearing and sight and smell. He can like smell people's emotions, and he can also telepathically connect with wolves. So on the way there, Perrin has just telepathically connected with all these different wolves, like all the wolves he can find, and he's requested them to come. And now it's funny because in the wolves' mind, Rand, the Dragon Reborn, this legendary figure, he is because the wolves hate Shadow Spawn and like Trollocs and Murdril and all the dark creatures, and so the in the wolves' mind, the wolves call Rand Shadow Killer because he is this legendary creature that kills the darkness. And so when Perrin asks all the wolves for help, the wolves are all like, "Why?" And Perrin just tells them they've caged Shadow Killer, and that makes all the wolves angry. So all the wolves are like, "We come," and then all the wolves just start coming towards Dumai's wells. So Perrin and his army arrive there around the same time as about 1,000 wolves. So Perrin then proceeds to attack the Shido. Perrin and his army, they descend, and all the wolves just descend on the Shido. So the Shido turn around to fight Perrin's army, and Perrin and his force, they manage to make it through the Aiel. Now, meanwhile, as this is going on, Rand has actually burst out of the chest. He picked apart the knots of the one power that were binding him, burst out of the chest, and he's been going around stilling, which is when you cut a woman off from the one power. He's been going around stilling the Aes Sedai. He rescued men, and now he's just in the grove stilling the Aes Sedai. So now the barrier has dropped. And so the Aes Sedai and their warders and their A couple hundred soldiers that they brought are trying to hold off the Shido, but this happens right as Perrin and his men crash into the Shido. So Perrin and his men manage to cut their way through the Shido, and Perrin reaches Rand. However, slightly before this, gateways begin to open at Dumai's wells, and Rand's Ashaman soldiers pop into the fray. Now, if you don't know anything about the Ashaman are basically men who can channel. And basically, when Rand started taking control of all these countries, he was like, it's not fair that men who can channel and when legends go mad are going to be hunted down and cut off from the one power because I'm a man who can channel. So throughout this entire book, Rand has been recruiting men who can channel and training them under the leadership of Mazrim Tayin, who was once a false dragon but has now sworn allegiance to Randolph IV. And so Mazrim Tayin has showed up with a couple hundred Ashaman soldiers. And so now it's just this whole mess because the Ashaman have popped in this battle and are killing Shido, but then Rand's Aiel are there. So, but Mazrim Tayyim's Ashaman have put up a dome of air similar to what the Aes Sedai were using. So Rand and all his Ashaman, like 200 Ashaman and Tayyim and Loyal and Perrin, like a few others, have made it safely inside the dome. And they've captured, and like the Ashaman, as soon as they got in, they captured all the Aes Sedai who captured Rand, and they've like put them in this circle with Ashaman guarding them, and the rest of the Ashaman are like holding up this massive barrier. Well, 40,000 Shido and a couple hundred Shido women are out there trying to get through the barrier still. However, when the barrier was put up, it accidentally cut off a bunch of the Kyranen, the Mayanners, and the Two Rivers men who were they basically cut off outside the dome. So they're in little pockets outside fighting for their lives. And so Taim is like, well, we should get out of here. My men can make gateways. We can get you through. We can get Rand, you through. And we can come back. And he's like, because there's just so many Shido. Rand, however, is not going to have it because all his soldiers are out there. And Perrin's like, you can't leave them out there to die. So Rand, in one of the most iconic Rand moments in the books, turns to Taim and tells Taim, when he gave Taim control of the men who can channel, it was like, I told you I want you to make weapons, Taim. Show me what they can do. And this is the first time in a couple thousand years that people have seen the one power be used by a bunch of men as a weapon. Until previously, like for the past 1,000 years or so, or maybe 3,000 years, the one power has been used solely by the Aes Sedai as to heal or to kill shadow spawn. But Rand has gotten together a couple hundred men who can channel and will eventually go mad, and they have just trained. Taim has trained them exclusively to use the one power as a weapon. Not even just lightning blasts or fire from the sky. Literally just make threads of the one power hit somebody and kill them instantly. And so Taim is like, okay. And so Taim rings the Ashaman around this massive circle and then raises the barrier. And so the Shido all stumble forward. And then Taim delivers two of the coldest lines in the entire real time. He says, Ashaman, kill. And then, as they say in the books, the front rank of Shido just explodes. The one power just bursts from the Ashaman, and they just start cutting down the Shido who are attacking. And they cut through the first line, they chop through the next line, they make the earth erupt in fountains of just flame and earth. And for the first time in the book, you see the one power being used by a bunch of men exclusively as a weapon. And it is just painted as this horrifying, sickening image. And then the Shido were some of the finest, the Aiel are some of the finest warriors in the world. They have never seen this before. So they just turn and they flee. And it's just thousands of bodies just littering the fields. And then Rand eventually grows sick of the slaughter. He's like, stop it, Taim. So Taim tells all the Ashmen to stop. And it's just this eerie, just dead silence. It's just dead silence. And so Rand looks around, and just everywhere it's just still, and there's just thousands of bodies just littering the ground. And it shows just how sickening war with the one power can be. And it's a really interesting perspective because it shows why the Aes Sedai swear the 3 oaths to do no harm. So they just can't just run around using the one power as a weapon. And the finest warriors in the world were broken by Rand's Ashaman army. And it even shakes one big thing about the Aes Sedai in Wheel of Time is that Aes Sedai are just always just serenely just calm and dignified. And the Aes Sedai who came with Perrin to rescue Rand, they walk up to Rand to try to talk to him. And like they're serene and calm, but you can tell they're shaking because they've never seen destruction on this scale before. It's really the first big battle in the book series. I guess there have been battles, like big battles in the past, but all of them just paled in comparison to Dumai's Wells. Dumai's Wells is also an interesting battle because while the previous big battles have usually resulted in victories for Rand, this one was it was a victory for him and his forces, but as a morale victory, not so much because Rand is basically, he was kidnapped, he was taken out of chest, he was like carried away in a chest 9 days, he was beaten. And this really changes Rand as a person, makes him more hard and cold. And so he sees all this carnage as Ashaman have done, but instead of being terrified of the power that is there and the just killing machine that he's made, he turns to Taim and he says, "Well done, Taim." And all the Ashaman, they start cheering for Rand and cheering for themselves, the Ashaman. So it's for the Ashaman, it's a morale victory because they're men who have been hunted down their whole life simply because they can channel one power, and they just basically clapped back at everybody who has ever like mistreated them. This is for them as a big morale booster because they're putting their talents to use for the savior of the world, and they're sitting there like proud of themselves. And Rand has told them they've done well, but for everyone else, they've just all the normal people who are sitting there. They're like, well, this changes battles forever because like, we're nothing against Ashaman soldiers, and the Aes Sedai are sitting there like we're bound by the 3 O's. If these Ashaman turn on us, we're basically nothing, which is a first for the Aes Sedai because up until now, the Aes Sedai have been the most powerful people on the playing field, and as a result, the most arrogant. And now they're forced to come to grips with the reality that there are men out there who are stronger than them. And so it also is a big blow for the Aes Sedai because the Aes Sedai who have come to rescue Rand with Perrin, they approach Rand expecting him to be grateful, and they're like, "Well, we came to rescue you," and they're like, they kind of admit, they're like, "Well, we didn't do a lot, but intentions count." Like they literally try to pull that line on Rand. One of them says, "We came to rescue you, though it appears you had small need of it because of all Ashaman." And she's like, "Still, intentions do count." And then, but Rand has had enough. Rand is not dealing with Aes Sedai anymore. So Rand looks at the Aes Sedai, and it's a callback to earlier in the book when he told the rebel Aes Sedai they could be on an equal footing with the Tower emissaries, Aes Sedai from the Tower. So he said they could each send 6. And this is kind of a petty detail, but it just shows where Rand is in his state of mind, that he just does not trust Aes Sedai. So he looks at the Aes Sedai and he's like, "I told you you could bring 6, yet here I count 9. And he says, "I told you you could be on an equal footing with the Tower emissary, and for bringing 9 you will be. Kneel." And this is like the first time in their life the Aes Sedai have ever been told by a man, no less, to like kneel. Like the Aes Sedai have knelt to the Amyrlin, who's a woman. They've never knelt or been knelt before a king or anything. So Rand tells these Aes Sedai to kneel, and they just look at him like, they just look at him coldly, and they're like, basically like, "Why are you have no authority?" But then Rand's Ashaman surround the Aes Sedai, and Mazrim Taim steps forward, and it says in the books this is the closest Taim has ever come to smiling. Taim looks at the Aes Sedai and he says, "Kneel and swear fealty to the Dragon Reborn, or you will be knelt." And then the Aes Sedai, they have no choice but to kneel and swear fealty to Rand al'Thor, which, as the book says, the world has changed forever because them doing so actually fulfilled one of the ancient prophecies of the dragon. One of the ancient prophecies said, quote, "The Unstained Tower broken will bend knee before the forgotten sign." Now, this is a really interesting because the Unstained Tower, of course, refers to the White Tower. And the broken part, obviously, is the White Tower was split in 2. And they'll bend knee before the forgotten sign, under the forgotten sign, which is interesting because by the 5th book in the series, Rand has basically 2 banners that mark his presence. He has the dragon banner, which is a like red and gold banner with like a dragon on it. And then he has what a lot of people call the banner of light. And it was basically in the modern day, the Aes Sedai's symbol is called the white teardrop. And it's basically just literally that, a curved, like kind of curved spherical teardrop, kind of large and then kind of thins. And what a lot of people, and that's represents the women in the White Tower. What a lot of people don't remember though is that in the um, Age of Legends, back when there were men and women Aes Sedai, the symbol of the Aes Sedai was the white teardrop and the dragon's fang, which was it's the white curved teardrop connected to the what people call the dragon's fang. It's basically if you've ever seen the yin yang symbol, it basically looks like that because the white half represented the women of the White Tower and the black half represented the men, and it was kind of like this symbol like there have to be both men channeling Saidin and women channeling Saidar for there to be like balance in the White Tower. And so this side, a lot of people who follow Rand at this point, they've begun to they put the ancient symbol of the Aes Sedai on a banner, and that's actually what waves over Dumai's wells. Because before Rand's Ashaman start to kill, Rand has the one of his Ashaman lift the banner of light way up into the sky, so it's sitting there flapping over Dumai's wells while Rand's Ashaman are mowing down Shido, and then later when the Aes Sedai are kneeling and swearing to Rand, which is just a really cool way that they fulfill this prophecy. And it just, from then on, the whole tone of the book changes. Like, in the past books, Rand's been mostly doing it alone with the help of a few Aes Sedai who are trying to, like, guide him and shape him, and he's had his friends. Now, Rand has an army of channelers of his own, and this just forever changes everything. Because now, Rand doesn't just have to rely on men with spears and stuff. Like the Aiel are amazing warriors, but now he's got men wielding the one power that he can rely on, and so the entire world kind of shifts because now kings and queens who were like, oh, we can oppose his armies of like Aiel and Kairenin. Well, a lot of them weren't like we can oppose his Aiel because the Aiel are fierce warriors who can kick the face of almost anyone on the planet. So if they thought, well, maybe we had a chance against Aiel, they're like, no, we don't have a chance against Ashaman and Aiel. And so it's just, the Battle of Dumai's Wells is not only really well written, but it just changes the entire scope of the story. And it kind of gives, it's really interesting because they do it in such a great way. Robert Jordan wrote it so well that you kind of feel like Rand's got this, but at the same time, you feel like Rand's descending into madness and that he's not who he's supposed to be. So it was really done well, and it is one of the greatest fictional battles of all time. So if you have time in your life, if you have not read The Wheel of Time, I highly recommend you read the book series. It is well worth the wait. You can listen to it on audiobook while you're doing chores, while you're cooking, while you're driving. It is an amazing book series, well worth the wait. And I will be doing more videos on it in the future, and I hope to catch you guys in them.